everyone. Well, you guys probably caught the last part of this. We were talking about a joke, but I want to first welcome everybody to the Jump Search Talent Show, sponsored by Jump Search and Executive Alliance. We help build executive roundtables for executives. So today we have our guest, Atul Sood, and our topic today is building better relationships to elevate your career. So as we're waiting for folks to join, I want to get a sense of where everybody's coming from. Put it in a chat. And as a heads up, we are going to be checking questions. So I will be monitoring questions on whatever panel, left side or right side here. So feel free to drop in your questions. We will be checking it. And if for some reason we don't answer your questions afterwards, we will also respond to it as well. So feel free to throw it in there. And I will want to start off this podcast with a quick joke. So I'm going to ask you guys.
Let's hear it.
So since it is Thanksgiving, now that we are officially in November, I want to give you a Thanksgiving joke. So why did the turkey join a band?
Oh, you tricked us. You gave us a different joke before we went live. No idea.
I got to switch it up. Eric, you got any answers there?
Break a leg. How's that?
I have no idea.
Hey, that's actually really close. So the answer is because it had drumsticks.
That was good.
You gave it away.
Yeah.
And I see a few of you guys are from Park City. We're in Heber, but in Park City. So we're in a small little town. It's getting a little bit cold.
It is.
All right. I'll let you kick it off. I know my cheesy jokes are just terribly cheesy.
All right. Thanks, Michelle, for kicking this off. Atul, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. I know you're super busy, and I appreciate you making some time for us and for our esteemed audience.
Yeah, so nice to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, for
sure.
I
don't know what the talent part of the talent show is. You're not going to have to.
The talent is you, Atul. The talent is you. You're on the hot seat today.
Okay.
So I met Atul back in May, just 6 months now. When we become fast friends, we were introduced by a mutual friend, Scott Petty, over at Signal Peak Ventures here. And we've become fast friends, and we have yet to meet actually in person. So I'm looking forward to the day that happens, Atul.
As am I.
Yeah, Atul has an interesting sort of non-linear career path and personal life path that I thought was very, very interesting to me. And he started out as after college, he went and became an engineer, and a self-described bad one at that. He went to investment banking. He worked as a turnaround CEO for some companies on Wall Street, and he started and sold his own sales acceleration company. And then he moved into food, working for McDonald's, and now he's heading up Kitchen United as CEO and also a co-founder. And so, today we want to talk with Atul today and learn a little bit more about his ability to create friendships and relationships and how that's really been an integral part of his personal and professional life. And hoping that we can learn some things from Atul in his journey and apply it to our own lives personally and professionally. And so with that, Atul, welcome. We're glad to have you here, and we're looking forward to this conversation today.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I think you make fast friends frequently, so I don't feel that special, Eric. But it was nice to be welcomed into the fold, and I feel, Michelle, like you and I have become fast friends as well. As I said, I'd love to visit Park City. I've heard beautiful, wonderful things about the place, and one day I'm sure we will meet in person. But in the meantime, I'm glad to get to know you better and the audience better through sharing a little bit more. And I'm really looking forward to being able to answer questions from the audience as we get going. I think it's interesting because I do have a background that's probably different than many people, but I met you at a time when I was in an inflection point in my career. I was wondering what to do next. I'd been at the current company that I now lead for just over 5.5 years, and was kind of wondering whether to stick with it or step aside and do something else. Ended up sticking with it. I'm now the CEO of the company. It's called Kitchen United. But you were remarkably helpful, Eric, in your kindness to take the time to think through the different strategies that we talked about together and make some introductions. And that kindness was very, very meaningful to me, particularly at that time, which was a challenging time for me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's we try to help, right? We try to help, and when someone like yourself reciprocates, it just snowballs, right? And we want to help people that are also helpful, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to a continued and growing relationship here, Atul. But as we start off here, why don't we just jump into tell me what it's like being you. Where are you coming from? Did my introduction do any justice? I would imagine did limited justice. But what's it like being you?
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
had some weird reverb happening for a second. Um, what's it like being me? That's such a deep question. I think um, it is now for me. It is living in the moment, right? I think it has been many different things being me. Sometimes I've been on highs and I've been on top of the world. Sometimes I've been on lows and I've been in basements and in the bottom of the world. And now, what it's like being me right now is I'm very present, and I am not fixated or focused on the things that have gone right or wrong in my past. I'm not fixated or focused on my background. I'm not really fixated or focused on the future. I'm indulging in the present, and I'm happy to be here. It is right now. It's very happy to be me. I feel like I'm surrounded by deep, good, loving friends, family, partners in work and in love, and I I I'm really happy. I'm fortunate, and I do a gratitude list every day. It reminds me of the things that I'm fortunate for, um, and it's great. It's great. I mean, I'm objectively in a number of situations that are stressful right now, in professional life, some in personal life. There's stress. There's stress in the air, right? But I'm not stressed, and that I think is a fortunate mindset to have, and I think
Atul,
it's something I've had to grow into.
what's your secret, man? There's a lot of folks, including ourselves, that are stressed these days. You look at all the things that are going on in this world, not to mention, just the local economy, the downturn in tech. There's a lot of folks out there that are struggling with, finding their next opportunity. What's the secret? How do you? I mean, you mentioned a gratitude list and doing that daily. I think that's something that we've tried to incorporate into our lives. But what are some of the other things that you do that help you maintain that sense of presence? And
I think the I think the main thing is just an inner belief that it will all be okay, and that um, there's an underlying piece that results from it, right? And I think part of it is because I've been through what I think poets call, or I heard somebody who referenced a poet call the dark night of the soul. Right, I've been through various challenging periods of my life. I will talk more about them, I'm sure, but divorce, mental health, lost jobs, um, not spending time with young kids that I had. I mean, just I've been through a lot of stuff, and I'm okay, right? Like I survived it, and I've been through financial pressures. I've been through um, uprooting myself and moving to a different part of the country or the world, and it's all, even in my lowest days, like back in my lowest days, I wasn't sure if it would all be okay. But I'm past some of those. Maybe they'll hit me again, um, but it has all ended up okay. And it's not because I have ended up leading a company or I've ended up um, sorting out some of my financial difficulties or that I'm in a good relationship or like it is not it is not because of the temporary things where like sure I'm CEO today, maybe I won't be CEO tomorrow or next year or 2 years from now, but I think it's just a deeper understanding and confidence that it is going to be okay,
You,
and that is why.
yeah, there's a lot of folks that we work with today that they're in a challenging time in their lives. They're trying to find their next job. There's probably a lot of financial pressures for many of these folks, and they're looking at sort of their next job is that sort of port or that harbor in the storm. And even if you make it to a harbor that's offers some potentially safe uh, safety, um, that idea that you mentioned of just having that deep internal conviction that everything's going to be okay, regardless of whether you're in the middle of the ocean or you are at a port or at some sort of harbor, I think is so powerful. And I guess how did you develop that through your ups and downs, and what role did friends and family sort of play in helping you to find that internal conviction that everything will be okay?
I think I only developed it because of the love I got from friends and family. Right. I think I was so low so many times that I forgot I didn't have the strength in myself, and that's why I talk a lot about the power of friendship. I think one of the big points of this conversation is going to be the power of friendship. You and I developed a quick friendship, and um, even though we've never met, even though we don't communicate that much, it's meaningful to me. And we've shared some very intimate things about my life, about your life, during the limited time we've known each other. And I didn't, I haven't, I don't have the strength in myself all the time, and I only get that strength from the love that is demonstrated to me that has been consistent. And I realize that's my good fortune that it's been consistent for most of my life. I had the good fortune of having loving parents. I've had the good fortune of having a loving extended family, sister, cousins. I've had the good fortune of maintaining and building great friendships with people who are very loving. I have a loving partner. Um, I exchanged texts with my ex-wife this morning. She's a very like she obviously we went through our troubles. We are exes, but she sent me very kind notes this morning, right? Um, and I think when you don't feel like you have the strength in yourself, I think it is important to open up those vulnerabilities to people that you do trust, or even people that you think you can trust, you might be able to trust, right? Who you might not know them that well.
Yeah.
And But you can get to know them well quickly if you give them a little bit of trust. And you might have been burned by trusting the wrong people before. You might have made misjudgments or mistakes. But I've found that if you are willing to share a vulnerability, then life doesn't need to be that lonely.
Yeah.
Um,
And so, Atul, give us a little background because probably, there are people like me in the audience that don't have a background on what you've been through. I've heard of the struggles that you've gone through and some of the pivotal moments in your life. Maybe just describe maybe a quick overview of, how were you brought up? What were your pivotal and challenging times that you faced?
Yeah, and look, I've had great times too, right? It's not been this life of misery. I've had a very fortunate life. I mean, really, an exceedingly fortunate life. Uh, it just that I think everybody's life has the good and the bad, and it's mixed together, and it blends into what is hopefully an overall positive arc. And my life is unusual, I would say. I was born in India. I lived in 7 countries growing up. Um, from uh, India, we moved to Singapore, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Tokyo. London, Saudi Arabia, India, and then I came here. I've lived in 6 cities here. So there's been a lot of transitions, right? Talked to somebody earlier this morning who'd never moved outside a 15-mile radius of where he lives right now. So that's a very different life than some people have had. And a lot of military people have that type of life. My dad worked for Citibank. That's why we moved around so much. But when you pick up and move every 3 to 4 years or 2 to 3 years, one of the things you learn is to make friends with people really quickly because you got to. And I became good at that. And then I went into a good university and did engineering, and that was influenced by my father. And I didn't quite have the courage at that age to tell him that's not what I wanted to do. And maybe I should have, but I didn't. I'm conflict avoidant. It's something that has been a big thing for me to work on throughout life. I think I've worked on it a lot, but still an area of improvement. And so I ended up doing engineering, and I was a really bad engineer. I mean, I joke about it. I had a 2.67 GPA from engineering school, and I didn't focus on engineering. I did Model UN and speaking, and I enjoyed the arts and English, and I did other stuff. And then I somehow graduated barely, and I moved into investment banking. I did well in investment banking, but it didn't seem like the right cultural fit for me for the long haul. And then I did a bunch of other things. I've had, I'm kind of an expert of I'm a what is it called? Jack of many trades, expert of none. Though I have built some expertise in the restaurant industry of late, but I graduated from college in 1998. I've had an almost, 25-year career. And I've done everything from automotive to Wall Street to sales, CRM to food and beverage. And I've done other things in between, publishing and a few other things. So I've done a lot of different things, and some of them have been successful, some of them moderately successful, and some of them have been utter failures. So um, I would say that I have been exposed to a lot, right? And I think you make a lot of progress in life through exposing yourself to as much as you can, and being a hungry learner when you get the chance to be. And I've had the good fortune of being exposed to a lot and learning a lot, and all of that is being applied right now in everything that I do, and that's exciting and fun. That was rambling, Michelle, but I realized I was just jumping. I don't want to make it sound like I've had this the only downs, right? Like I think everybody has downs, but you rebound, and then you should enjoy the ups too.
Yeah. Well, what I understand is a lot of people, I mean, to get to success, and people look successful on LinkedIn or other places, there's a lot of failures. There's a lot of no's. There's a lot of rejections in between. And for me, I'm curious about the failures. I'm curious about the rejections, because that's what makes you who you are. That's also what helps with the pivots and the career transitions that people go through.
Hmm.
And so, we've been going through that, and those career transitions and pivots are really, I think, critical, and it stands out in my mind.
I would say, look, right now, right, like at the dot-com crash, I'm old enough to remember it, like at the financial crisis in 2007, 8, 9, right now, over the last 18 months, I think a lot of people have been jarred into reevaluating their career. And I would say that when macroeconomic events or macro company events happen that jar you into uh, rethinking what you're doing because you lose a job, or because you might lose a parent, you might right, like, who knows what happens? There might be an external factor, right? The economy is external, health issues are external, divorce in some ways is external to your career, but it impacted mine. Um, it it forces you to evaluate. That's a like I think I think the general perspective is when you lose a job for people to say, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you were laid off," or "I'm so sorry you were fired." Oh, like maybe it's not that bad a thing, right? Maybe it's an opportunity. Yeah, it sucks. But maybe you get severance. I had a friend who lost a job. He got 9 months severance. I mean, holy cow, that's amazing, right? You can take 3 months off, reevaluate life. You got 6 months salary. Take another 3 months to find the right job, and then get back into it. That's a blessing. Um,
Yeah.
um,
It's
so
not
go ahead.
it's not often that that happens, but when it does happen, it can be sort of anxiety filled for a lot of people because of the uncertainty. But if we can learn to lean into it, there's a lot of opportunity that it can create. A lot of opportunity for self reflection to sort of figure out what worked well and where you want to go from here, kind of thing. Sort of a fork in the road, right? Um, but just going back to a comment that you made about sort of exposure to different people and your upbringing and just moving around and learning that skill of how to make friends. um, you know, uh, Knowing what I know of you, Atul, like your ability to make friends is, unparalleled. And I'm just wondering, how do you decide? Michelle and I are older now. Well, we're older. It's not like, in college where, it's just so easy to make friends. Now it sort of takes more thought about, okay, who do I want to invest my time with, right?
Mhm.
On a personal and a professional level, right? How do you think about that, right? I mean, your time is limited. You're busy. You're traveling. You're running a company. Like, how do you decide who you spend time with? Because you can't spend time with everyone. How does that work for you?
Right.
How do you think about that?
I think that's a good question. And I think earlier in my life, a friend of mine used to joke. I used to do these happy hours every other Friday or something in New York. I was recently married, and I'd get together people for happy hour somewhere. And a friend of mine joked that I would have a lot of flotsam and jetsam there, right? Like just a lot of random people pulled together for happy hour. And my friend's name is Chris Albergo. I'm sure he'll listen to this. I'll send it to him. And I think it was true. I would have a lot of flotsam and jetsam. And just a lot of people that I would see at maybe 1, 2 happy hours, and I would never see again. Right? They were friends for a moment, not friends for life. And I think what's changed is I think I've been more in touch with myself and been more true to myself to actually say no, to know when I don't feel that, right? Like, and it is a feeling, it is a little subjective, it's a little hard to define, but it's that gut instinct which tells you, like when I met you or when I met Michelle, like I want to be your friend. And I didn't, I had, back to my conflict avoidant nature, I had difficulty saying no to people when I didn't feel like they aligned with who I wanted to be. And now I'm much better at saying no to people because I do have limited time, right? I'm working very hard at Kitchen United and I have limited time. And I will take time for friends in need always. I have a friend whose mother is in need right now, and I'm taking time for her. And that's important. It's a health issue. But uh, saying no is critical. That's a skill that I just never had. I think I've only had that as I've grown up, right? And I think I've only grown up recently. I'm 47 years old. I don't feel like I grew up until recently.
It's a continual work in progress, right? Aren't we all?
Yeah.
So how have your, I mean, looking back at your personal and professional life, how have your views and your attitudes on friendship, whether in the personal sense or in the professional sense, how have your views and attitudes evolved?
I think they've evolved to being um, more focused on wanting to um, indulge in friendships that can be intellectually or professionally stimulating. And that is how I make. I mean, you brought up the point of college. It's easy to make friends, right? I mean, what is that different from being in a dorm and being in a company? I mean, you might not kind of all party together at night, living across the hall from each other, but even in the age of remote work, right? Like you spend a lot of time together. You are working in classes together on projects together. You are pursuing the same goal as a company, right? You're all pursuing an education in college. You're all pursuing success with the company. You have shared culture, hopefully. At the company has a culture. You do happy hours at a company. You did happy hours in college. So how much difference is there? Why can't you build real company friendships with your peers? Why can't you build friendships with your clients? Why can't you build friendships with your vendors? Right? Like it isn't that different. It is an environment where people can stimulate each other intellectually and chase the same thing. And why can't that be a platform?
There's, a lot of people, including myself, have always had this idea that we compartmentalize, work friends versus non-work or social friends. And, I guess, what are your thoughts on sort of uh, breaking down sort of those compartments? Like, I mean, to what extent do you hang out with personal friends versus, or do you even distinguish between personal friends and sort of work friends?
I don't really distinguish. That might be unusual, but I look. One of the earliest steps in my career, I worked for a company called Trilogy down in Austin, Texas. Incredible alumni network. I'm still friends with many of the people I worked with. Tight alumni network as well. Very professionally successful people by and large, and um, they brought people from all over the country down to Austin, Texas before. This is in 1998 through 2001, or 1996 really through 2001, 2002. And the number of marriages that happened from that company are just shocking. The number of friends, the number of co-founders, and it's because they had an incredible cultural fit, because they attracted top talent from top universities, and that was their recruiting profile. And because they fostered a culture that was almost cult-like, that was very inclusive and interactive, and a lot of relationships developed, some marriages, and a lot of friends became friends for life. And so I don't necessarily distinguish between work friends and outside of work friends. I'm friends with almost everybody I wanted to be friends with, who I've worked with for the last 25 years. I'm friends with, and I think that's great. I mean, it helps me professionally. I can call people from 8 years ago at McDonald's, and I can help them. I'm asking some. I'm doing some fundraising right now. I'm asking some ex McDonald's colleagues if they want to be involved in what we're doing at Kitchen United, and I think that's great. And it's easier to call them as friends who I've been in touch with for 8 years than it would be if I hadn't kept in touch with them because I wasn't friends.
Yeah. Yes. What do you think are the big missed sort of opportunities that most people um, might not be taking advantage of when they think about integrating the power of friendship into their professional life?
I think it's ease, right? It's the fullness of life and it's ease. It is so much easier to be authentic and let your guard down, than to be rigid and keep it up. Um, it is so much easier. Um, So even whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, whether you're an oversharer like me or an undersharer, right? Like it is just so much easier to let your guard down and take out those preconceived notions and be your authentic self. It's
So,
freedom.
what was that term you just used?
Oversharer. I
Oversharer.
definitely overshare, right? I'm sharing to people I don't know right now about, divorce and mental health and whatnot, right? Like I definitely overshare. I recognize that, um, but it is the fullness of life, Eric, right? Like I think you must lead a pretty full life. Do you feel like you lead a full life?
I try. I
Yeah,
think I try. I think there's still gaps, and I'm trying to sort of figure out what those gaps are and how to kind of um, fill those. Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, and I think everybody tries. I'm trying too. I don't purport to say that I lead this awesome full life where everything's easy. It's definitely a tough, challenging life at times. But I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to live it when I have friends at work who I can rely on and release onto and use as therapeutic sources of care in my life, right? And then reflect that back to them. Because you look, I mean, people say there are a lot of people who say that being CEO is a lonely job. It is absolutely something that can be a lonely job. But if you
yeah.
trust various people and are open with them, it removes some of the loneliness.
Atul, have you always been a self-described oversharer, or is that something that you've sort of evolved into?
I, I mean, I, I probably have been.
Yeah,
That's probably something I maybe I learned early in life as a learned behavior helped me make friends.
yeah,
So probably have been, but I've always been somebody uh, from the beginning, and I can say this surely, always been somebody who does not have boundaries between personal and professional life.
yeah.
I from the very first job I've had as an investment banker, I became friends with my colleagues. Um, yeah.
And it's interesting. The this idea of oversharing is something that even recently I've been exploring because I've been creating more content on LinkedIn, and this sort of idea of sort of oversharing or having a platform where you share more of your voice. Um, the way I've started to look at it is, you send this out into the world of who you are, and the louder that is, the more reach you can get in terms of people knowing who you are and sort of attracting that into your life. It's almost sort of like a personal branding thing, right? You stand on this platform and you signal to the world what you stand for, what you believe in, what you enjoy, what you like, and it becomes sort of this thing where the people that don't, whose message your message doesn't resonate with, you kind of detract, and that's okay. And the people that with whom your message does resonate, you kind of attract. And so I
Hmm.
found that to be an interesting way of doing it. But it sounds like maybe that's kind of the dynamic that you've seen or you've realized in being quote unquote an oversharer. Um, I mean, your level of sharing obviously is appropriate for yourself, right? It might be not appropriate for someone else, but at least that's kind of what I've realized in just recently in terms of me sharing more about myself and my thoughts and learnings and the successes, the highs and lows,
Yeah.
and it's attracted interesting people in my life now, including
Yeah.
yourself.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we met. Right. And I'll tell you, it's been incredibly productive and rewarding, and professionally and personally, what I've been doing on LinkedIn, which is much more active for about 5 months, maybe six, maybe longer. Um, it's exposed me to great relationships. I had coffee and an asparagus and burrata salad yesterday with a guy named Joseph. He runs a company called Nutrit, amazing company, food is medicine, and he's an amazing guy that I know through LinkedIn, right? And we met for the first time. I think we have a deep bond. We talked while he was in Israel, um, and then met for the first time here. And he's had very kind things to say about what I've been posting on LinkedIn. Um, and and this is a new relationship that has evolved from LinkedIn into real life. And maybe we'll work together. There might be some stuff Kitchen United can do with him. There's definitely an intent on my part to help him outside of Kitchen United as well. Maybe we won't, but hopefully we will. But either way, there's a new friend in my life that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been doing what I'm doing on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Atul, what is your I mean, what is your playbook for realizing or making connections through social media, LinkedIn, for example? What does that look like for you, and how has that evolved?
Yeah, that's a great question because I don't have one. And maybe I can go back and diagnose what has worked, so to speak, to figure out one and then like write a LinkedIn post about it. But I um, I'm not a process oriented human. I'm just not. I'm not good at process. I'm not good at structure. I um, I forgot to invite many friends to my wedding. Just forgot, right? Because I didn't have a list, and I have recency bias, and I had just talked to X dozen friends, and I hadn't talked to a couple of others, and I wasn't very thorough in making the list. And I have a friend, Vikram Gupta, who never received an invite, who's a good friend of mine still. And it wasn't out of like not wanting him to come. It's just because I didn't follow a process to make sure that every friend was invited. um, and so I don't have trouble structure. Now I have, thankfully, at Kitchen United, a team that is very structured, that gives me support, but I'm not very structured. So yeah, I can like I did Sean Morini, who's our chief operating officer at Kitchen United, kind of broke down what I was doing on LinkedIn and broke down the way I post, and he was like, "This is what you do, X, Y, Z." I was like, I guess that is, but um, I will go into a rabbit hole one day and I'll start commenting on people's posts when I have time early in the morning when I wake up, or I'll go and look at my people who've looked at my profile, and then I'll go reach out to some of those. But look, I've been really busy the last month and a half since I've been CEO. So posting takes, but I know some people put a lot of thought into posts, and it feels like they're publicizing themselves maybe, and they're um, you know, putting it all out there, and they need to paint a picture. I don't put much thought. Posting takes me like 2 minutes. And maybe that's because I'm an extrovert. Maybe it's because I write really fast. Maybe it's because I just like, I literally just post what's on top of mind. And then I post it, and then I go on, and every so often I check who's commented or whatnot on my post and respond to those. But it's just a hobby for me, right? It's like I don't
Yeah,
scroll much on Facebook. LinkedIn is my social
it's
media
probably a good
feed,
thing.
but there's no playbook. Yeah,
Yeah, but it sounds like I mean it's working well for you in terms of you being able to connect with the right people and
it
foster
is.
deeper
I've met
relationships.
investors, I've met partners, I've met vendors, I have met friends. I have a passions outside of Kish United as well, in online publishing and a few other things, and I've met interesting people through that.
Yeah, yeah. What are your thoughts, Atul, on sort of the flip side of a of as you think about like integrating this notion of friendships and developing friendships to sort of building teams and building cultures within an organization. You are the leader for your organization there at Kitchen United, and so you have I would argue that you probably have a strong influence on how the culture evolves. And I guess when you think about a culture or a group of friends or coworkers that you want to work with, how do you think how does that factor into building your team or hiring? And so I know this is like kind of a multi-pronged question here, but maybe you could just comment a little bit about on your thoughts on building teams, building cultures, and as a job seeker looking to evaluate particular company, how should they look at companies and figure out whether they're the right fit for them? It's two sides of the coin, right? Maybe you could just comment on that. I know it's kind of a long-winded question.
Yeah, no, I'll try to address each component of it. Um, I think any company I would want to work for would be a culture first company that cares about their people. Um, and and we do. And we've been through, I'd say, some waves, but we do. And reinforcing that when I took over the helm here was critically important to me, and making sure everybody believed that. And there are a couple of things, and I do think culture, not just from the CEO, but culture can only be formed. It has to come down from leadership in some ways, right? As good as the culture might be in the field, and we have many staff that work on site that are far flung, right? We have sites in Indianapolis and Columbus and Los Angeles, and then there's a small corporate team, but lots of people on staff in the sites. Um, and they might have really good morale at the site, but then if they get on a meeting with an ops person or with a finance person or with an HR person, and that isn't nurtured, and instead a different feeling is given to them, then that culture gets hurt a little bit. So I think culture does come from the top and then it spreads. Um, and I think most importantly, in building culture, there needs to be openness of communication. I think that's critical. Frequency of communication and openness in communication. And particularly in companies that have remote first work policies or hybrid work policies where you're not seeing each other at the water cooler every day, communication needs to be solid. We went from one of the first things I did was we started weekly all hands meetings. And that was important. There was a change in leadership, and we needed to communicate exactly what was happening. There was a change in strategy, and we needed to communicate exactly what was happening. And little things like we hadn't had an all hands meeting in a bit, and people didn't know each other. How do people in Dallas know people in Columbus if you don't have a all hands meeting? And so we spent 15 minutes at the end of all hands doing little icebreakers, just get to know you. So simple things like that. But I'm a very culture oriented person.
Yeah, the extent to there's a to the extent that there's a sort of a rapport among folks, it really lays a strong foundation for folks to work effectively together. Um, awesome, Atul. I really appreciate you spending the time here with us. Any sort of last anything top of mind that you want to share with our audience? Again, many of whom are maybe looking for their next opportunity or just trying to really optimize or maximize their effectiveness in their career and their personal and professional life. And I guess any sort of parting thoughts for folks.
Yeah, and I'd love to answer any questions, but in general, I would say I know it's hard to believe that when people say it'll all work out, right? When you've just had a transition of some kind, and people say, "Oh, it'll all be okay. Maybe this is a blessing." All like it sounds sometimes like nonsense, but I think it is whether or not you believe things will work out, it is at the very least, an opportunity to reflect on what you really want to do. And that opportunity might just be forced on you right now. But even if it is not, even if you are in a job and you're not terribly worried about that job going away, I think it's good every so often to take a step back and figure out, is this the right job for me to be in? I know plenty of people who voluntarily quit jobs that might not be the right without anything lined up. I've done it before, um, without anything lined up. Like that evaluation shouldn't always be forced upon you. Maybe you should make time for self-reflection and a step back, even even when the paychecks are coming in.
Yeah. Atul, congrats on your new role. I know you're crazy busy, so we don't want to consume all of your time here. But what are some ways that folks in our audience can connect with you?
Happy to LinkedIn is probably the best.
Okay.
My name is there on the screen, and
And I'll
I
throw it into the comments.
perfect. And I respond. I definitely respond to everybody on LinkedIn, and then from there we can go to email, phone, etc. But I'm pretty responsive. I wake up early in the morning, as you know, Eric.
Yeah.
So very very responsive early in the morning is kind of my personal time, and then the day goes into Kitchen United.
Atul's working in sort of a European time zone.
Yeah, exactly. Uh,
Atul, we did have one question. You were talking about just quick question. You talked about the gratitude journal, and here we had a question about how if you could dive further into the gratitude journal or how not to be stressed. I know you touched upon it, but if there's any tips that you can kind of share.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the gratitude journal is not really a journal. It's a text thread with several friends. We text each other every day. I do 5 points of gratitude, just whatever comes to mind in that moment. And I do write really fast. I think that's what helps my LinkedIn and email and communication. I write really fast. So I do the gratitude list in probably 60 seconds. And then it's easy to do every day. But what I do every day, also because it's a text thread between several friends, is I read everybody else's gratitude list, and that gives me perspective. Sometimes somebody's grateful that today's the day their mom passed away, right? Or today's the day it is their mom's birthday and she passed away, and they reflect on their mom. And then I'm thankful, I'm lucky that my mom's still alive, and but I reflect on their gratitude. So it's not just my gratitude; it's the community gratitude that gives me other things to reflect on. So that's really powerful for me. And then the thing to not being stressed, I don't know. I don't know why I'm not more stressed right now. But I think it is because I've become really fanatical about protecting my routine. I travel a lot. I'm in New York right now. I'm in Cincinnati and Indianapolis and New York and San Francisco next week. But every single day, I'll wake up between 3:30 and 4:30 in the morning. I will read. I do the gratitude list. I go to the gym. I do a LinkedIn post. I will nap every afternoon. And I have a routine that I am fanatical about. And that routine just keeps me sane. So if somebody like I will not take meetings between 2:30 and 4 o'clock. This is actually a little later for me than usual, but between right now between 3 and 4:30, I will not take meetings. I'm fanatical about my routine.
That's awesome.
I'm going to start
Nice.
a thread with us, Atul, a gratitude thread.
Let's do it. I'll do it every day. Um,
I'm game.
awesome. It really helps. It's a simple step.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, Atul, thank you for your time. And thank you, everyone in our audience, for joining us here today. This will be published on Spotify as well in a week or two when we launch the formal podcast channel on Spotify. And join us next time. Stay tuned, and thank you all.
All right. Thanks, Atul.
Thank
See
you,
you, everyone.
Michelle. Bye bye.
Bye bye.